So there's a lot of aspects of audio recording that I think we want to talk about today. But one of them that I've been mildly obsessed with for a couple years now is covert recordings, where I record things, uh, audio record, sometimes conversations around me, not in any sort of, uh, blackmail type way. But I do it for the memories, because when I listen back on audio recordings, there's something different about the way it works with my memory than video or pictures or anything else. There's something a little bit magical about audio only recordings. For instance, I remember I went to Portland a couple years ago to visit you, and we were sitting in your backyard. We're all kind of sitting around. It's very late. It's very dark, and there's a street light in the corner, and we're all drinking beers. I'm probably on like my third one or something, but I just remember us sitting there, and this, I don't know. It was a cool night, and we were having fun, just hanging out, and I remember this only because of the recording, but I remember I saw this, like, on the street light in the corner, outside of your yard, sort of across the street, there's this rat that runs up the power line, up the street light. It's like, whoa, that's kind of creepy, or whatever. And we're all just kind of sitting there. And then we hear this music, like this real ominous music in the background. And of course I recognize it, but it takes me a second. And I don't know if it affected anyone else in our circle of people the way that it did me, but it's just this like ominous music that's clearly very loud somewhere kind of far away. And it just sort of starts pulsating. And then I recognize, oh, that's from Stranger Things. But it was such a strange kind of otherworldly feeling of this music just being played, and it seemed to fit the feel of the situation really well. So I'm going to play the recording, and I want you to, whatever visuals you had while I was telling the story, compare them now to how it feels when you're listening to the audio. So it's like 15-second clip or something, but okay, I'm going to play it.
From the Bachelorette, because I went. Is that our speaker?
No.
So when I listen to that, it takes me right back, and it recalls all of these visuals that I had, and the feeling, and the cold beer, and the night, and just that feeling of that music. Just I think we figured out it was a bike ride, and it was some giant bike ride, and they had this massive speaker or something just blaring this music across the whole town. But it was just this really weird experience. And so as soon as I heard it and realized what was happening, I immediately started recording. And I actually have like 25 different recordings of that same trip, conversations or whatever, just random noises. Or I have some recordings of the plane ride, just the announcements over the thing. And you listen back and it's like, oh yeah, I remember exactly where I was sitting, what it felt like. There's just something different about audio recordings. And so I just wanted to bring up that other aspect. We'll be talking a lot about, I think, taking notes and talking into a recorder and all that stuff. But there's this other side of it, which is this way to capture memories that I think is very, very rarely used by most people.
Well, couple reactions to that. So you allowed me to listen to this just a minute ago before we played it here. So then just now listening to it, I had no idea you were recording. That's sort of an interesting thing that you do that I know about now. So Okay, we'll set that aside. But it's funny because you talk about the memory aspect of it, and if you take a video of something, well, the video it's the video. It has audio, it has visuals, it shows you exactly what was happening. So the video becomes the memory in a sense. Pretty often we think we have memories and they're really more to do with you're kind of relying on a photo, you're relying on a video that kind of replaces what's in your memory. But listening to just the audio, you said that to me, I had no clue what it was. And I'm listening to it, trying to pick things out, and I'm like, that person sounds like me. That person sounds like my wife. And I'm starting to realize, oh, okay, this is us together. And then I'm hearing something. You actually had me listen to a slightly longer version, so there's some other stuff around it too that
Yeah,
helped.
you got the uncut. Yeah.
Yeah, I got the minute-long director's cut. But there's like the sound of my fence, so I'm having to place that and think, okay, you're here with us. That's my backyard. We're hearing this sound. I'm hearing you talking. I'm like, oh, a bike ride. And I'm starting to piece together the memory of what that was. But it's kind of a cool thing because I'm having to piece it together. It's not a video. It's not just showing me something. It's like me having to crawl into little corners of my brain and think, oh yeah, okay, this is when you were here and we were hanging out and everything. So it's a pretty cool experience.
Yeah, I was wondering what your side of it would be because I did not give you any extra information about this. I just sent you a recording.
Yeah.
This was what, 2-3 years ago?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. So
Years ago.
do you even remember the Stranger Things music playing?
I
Or
don't know if I remember the Stranger Thing. In fact, I didn't even pick up on that until you said that, and then we listened to it the second time. Um, to be fair, we are like, so every year Portland does Pedalpalooza, which is now 3 months of just constant bike rides that have all these different themes. There's a Lady Gaga ride. The Daft Punk ride went by our house the other night. So we see lots of these, which is super cool. So that one didn't stand out. Right, I didn't remember that one specifically, but we have lots and lots of these rides.
yeah. Well, okay. I have a lot of things to say about this because I've been kind of obsessed with recording things for a long time. Even just way back in the day, when I was playing a lot of music, I was probably, I don't know, 13, 15, whatever. I would carry around a little tape recorder and record, any song idea or whatever. And I'll go back and listen to those, although I haven't in a long time, and you just hit play. And then, some of them are completely lost to my memory. Like there's no hook. And I can't figure out when it was, who it is in the background that's talking, what's going on, what room was I in. I can't figure out what era of my life it's from. But then other ones, you turn it on and it's just, wow, I remember that room. I remember the lighting. I remember the feeling of being there. And it's just really cool. But James Gurney, who I talked about a lot as this artist, he talked about one time where he went on this vacation, and the only thing him and his wife brought were tape recorders and sketchbooks. No cameras, no video cameras, nothing else but tape recorders and sketchbooks. And he's released some of these on YouTube where you can just listen to the audio recordings of some of these vacations or trips that he's gone on. And it's really kind of fascinating. It's very different than watching a video on something because you are piecing together this whole world in your head as you're listening to audio recordings. So I think and I have so many weird random memories and things in my audio recordings that I haven't even really gone through. But when I do, it brings it back in a way that videos and pictures just don't. And I think it's rather strange that most people don't use audio only as a way to record a lot of memories or experiences. It's just, one, hearing the sound of your own voice is often horrifying. And two, why would you do that when you just have a camera? Why not just record the video? And obviously, I do that too. But there's something kind of magical about audio only recordings that I think is just sort of this lost beautiful thing that most people don't think of, or why would they? Because they have a video camera.
It's interesting too. I actually remember when I was teaching music in person a lot, uh, this would sort of happen incidentally where I would have, just a recorder on my phone, and my student, whoever was there, would say, "Hey, let's record you playing, and then we can listen to it, and you'll get a different perspective on it, whatever." So pretty often I just set the recorder up, and they would play, but maybe we would talk a bit first, or it would just kind of run for a while, and with what was intended to just be like a clip of music ended up being a recording of us talking and interacting. And it's kind of, I'm sure those are still around somewhere. I really should find them. But I mean, technically it wasn't candid because, they knew that, but we would just kind of forget about the recording. It'd just be going or whatever. And so I have all these clips of me talking with, somebody who's in their 70s trying to learn guitar for the first time, or a 4-year-old, or just people from all different backgrounds and cultures and everything, and we're just interacting, and it's very natural because they aren't, it's not like I have the camera and we're performing for the camera. Like, people, as soon as you pull out a camera, whether it's for a still photo or a video, people kind of turn on this, okay, we're in front of a camera type of act. But with this, it just sat there and we just don't think about it. And it's really interesting and fun to listen to. I mean, I had listened to some of them years later. It's been a while now, but I think, oh my God, I remember this person. I remember having this like really great, genuine interaction with them. And you're right. It's a really unique thing that is probably not, it's definitely not captured in a photo. And I don't know that it's really captured in a video feed either, for those two reasons. One, because a video, it's like the Heisenberg uncertainty principle, like observing people with the camera causes them to change their behavior. And then also it just sort of lays out everything for you. Whereas with the audio, you can remember things and piece together something yourself. So that's a really interesting angle. And that's a slightly creepy, but interesting thing that you do.
I'm not even going to defend myself. Well, the audio, listening back to these audio recordings, these weird things I've recorded, it reminds me of when I was in high school. Around that time, me and my friend would go sit in his truck and listen to Echoes. Do you remember that?
Oh, yeah, totally.
The radio station Echoes? Mm-hmm. And I don't know, it was like every night or every Tuesday or Thursday night from 9 to 11 or something like that. Yeah. And we would just sit there and listen to this. It was sort of this new agey, spacey
This is with John DeLiberto, right?
Yeah, John. Yes. I haven't heard that name since then.
I know.
But yeah.
It's such a cool name.
And it would just be this kind of like experimental, whatever. But it would just put you into this trance, and you just sit there and listen to this radio show for, I don't know, an hour or 2 hours or something. Yeah. And you just think and wonder. And it was totally different than, opening up Spotify, choosing specific songs that you want or whatever. But also listening to audiobooks. You listen to the audiobook, I guess also reading a book, but there's something that happens with an audiobook where it's not like watching a movie. Your imagination is engaged when that's the case. And if you're listening to something, you start imagining these scenes. And I don't know. I guess I could just keep rambling on about that. But it's something that I think people should try out because it's really quite cool. It's like the difference between you have your phone and you have thousands and thousands of photos on there. Mm-hmm. And you hardly ever look at them. But if you have a physical photo, you tend to admire it a little bit more, or there's some sort of uniqueness that's applied to it. Like Polaroid cameras are becoming very popular again, and they have been for a few years. But you get a little Polaroid picture, and you just kind of admire it more than some digital version on your phone. And it's kind of like that with audio recordings. You could have more, but sometimes more is cheapening in a way. And it's not quite as immersive for your imagination or your brain or whatever. Okay.
Yeah.
We can cover some other aspects now, but...
Okay. That's really interesting and not something I'd thought about very much up till now. So the other thing that's kind of been going on, so I got you set up with this past week, but there's been something that I've been using for a few months now, and it's kind of been evolving over time. So I mentioned this, but my wife got me this little voice recorder, uh, just as sort of a slightly funny offhand gift because I was admiring the one that Agent Cooper uses in Twin Peaks. So she bought me one for my birthday, and I was like, "Oh, that's funny, whatever." I use it all the time. I mean, every day. Occasionally, I use my phone uh, in lieu of this, but I prefer using this. So I've started doing just a lot of voice memos. Typically, I'll do it when I get out of the house on a walk. I walk the dog first thing in the morning, so almost always, I'll pull it out then and just kind of do like a really basic sort of journaly type of thing where I'll just sort of state like, all right, I'm waking up. This is how I'm feeling. This is what I'm going to try and do today. Just get my thoughts organized a little bit. So this has kind of been evolving over time where I've just been using it a lot and thinking a lot about voice recording. And so I've hacked together this little sort of AI pipeline thing. And this is what I got you set up on last week. I don't know how well it's working. We could talk about that. But the basic idea is real simple. So when I record something with this doesn't have any kind of radio or wireless connection, but I'll record things onto here, and then when I plug it into my PC, like with a little USB-C cable, it automatically, like something spins up, it grabs all the audio files off of this, puts it in a folder, and kicks off this pipeline. And then if I use my phone instead, this will record files into a folder, and then whenever it's on Wi-Fi, those get synced to the same folder that these files get put into, and then they go into the pipeline. So basically, I can record on the voice recorder, I can record on the phone, and then one way or another, they go through this process. So what happens is all the files get put into a folder. They all get fed into Whisper, which is a transcription model that OpenAI, believe it or not, actually released to the public. And I've mentioned this before because I'm using a similar setup for my YouTube script summarizer thing. But all these files go into Whisper. I get this full transcript. It's very fast. It's very good. It does occasionally go insane and do super weird stuff, which I think you witnessed, where it just starts like going nuts and repeating one weird word over and over. It's just kind of creepy. But most of the time, it's really good. Transcribes everything, and then it feeds it into. Go ahead.
Yeah, I had recorded something, and it's just got this, giant transcript of everything I said, and then all of a sudden, it types in Stavros. I don't know what Stavros is, but it says that about 600 times in a row, and it's just kind of creepy.
It is kind of creepy. Yeah. That's the kind of bugs you get when you're using AI. It's just totally insane things that make no sense. It's weird. Anyway, so then I've had that same, I don't know if it was Stavros, but it was something like that. I think I actually have seen the Stavros thing. For some reason, it gets stuck on the word Stavros.
Weird.
So anyway, so it goes through, usually gets it right, transcribes everything, and then feeds it into Llama 3. And that is told to, there's a couple different prompts that I use, but it basically says, extract the key points, put them in a bulleted list, don't do any extra filler text, just make like simple action item bullet points. And then that gets fed into this sort of journal file where it's just like organized by date, and the full transcript is just written out in this text file journal with the key points at the bottom. And so I can open up that journal file anytime I want and just kind of search things and grab the bullet points out of it if I want to, or just kind of skim the summary or look at the full transcript. And there's also a mechanism where if you begin a voice memo by saying note to self, then it goes through the same pipeline, but it puts it in this special file called notes to self. And it's basically just like an easy way for me to find every time I said note to self, which usually that's just me like laying out very specific to-do items. It's like note to self, don't forget to pick up this at the grocery store. I open up that file and it's got all these little bullet items in there. that's it. It's real simple. It sounds like probably this kind of thing will exist for everyone very soon. Well, everybody who is rich enough to afford an iPhone, this will exist for them very soon in one form or another, where Apple's going to do this something vaguely like this.
Yeah.
So that's the setup. Um, I've I've been going really hard on this software project for the past almost 3 months now, and I have developed this love and just deep appreciation for being able to think in words, like spoken words. And the way this typically works for me, like on any given day, I mean, this happened today. It happens virtually every day where I'm working a lot, doing a whole lot of programming and design work and everything. Uh, where I'll just be working for hours on, I have my to-do list, I'll pick a specific problem, I'll go really dig into that, I'll get very focused, really dialed in on that one thing, and then I eventually sometimes it's longer than it should be, but I'll get up, say, okay, I gotta take a break, I gotta refocus, I gotta kind of think through and process what I did. And so I will just get outside, go for a walk, and I will just talk into the voice recorder. And so the I'm struggling a little bit to explain why this is so valuable for me, because obviously you can just get up and go for a walk and think, and that's also great. Like, I'm not saying this is, a whole different thing, but being able to talk into the voice recorder does a couple things for me. One, if I'm just thinking without being forced to kind of vocalize things, I have a tendency to get stuck in these sort of thought loops where my brain just kind of won't let go of one particular thing, and so I'll just kind of loop around and keep thinking about that and thinking about it, or the kind of dialogue in my head gets sort of stuck. I may have even talked about this a little bit when we were talking about the voice recorder originally, but so there's that problem that will happen if I'm just sort of thinking. And then the other problem is that my mind will tend to jump from one thread to another. So there might be some issue that I'm trying to think through, but as soon as it gets kind of hard or fuzzy or something, pretty often my thoughts will just kind of like, okay, what about this? And I'll just almost like imagine that I've solved that problem, even though I haven't really. But when I'm talking into the voice recorder, it forces me to actually carry through and complete a thought. Now, there's nobody like making that happen, but there is something about having to vocalize things where it kind of, you have this momentum, and it just doesn't make sense to sit there and like stop halfway through a sentence and start talking about something else. It can kind of carry you through it. So it's super helpful for me to think things through. But the key thing, the thing that I really appreciate about this AI setup and all that stuff, is that as I'm thinking through stuff, I often wind up with like a particular idea or a solution to a problem, or just something I've realized, oh, I need to do this particular thing. And so I just flip the switch real quick on my voice recorder and then say, note to self, try approaching the problem with this, or build a test case that checks this particular number, whatever it is. I could just have this thought, get it down, and then move right back into the groove that I was in before. And I know that gets captured, and it's very, very easy for me later to just go grab all those little like to-do, note to self things and put them onto my, kind of working to-do list. And so it gives me this way of thinking that I haven't really been able to get in any other way. I mean, I love, I have my notebook, I write stuff down, but it's very different because when you're journaling and writing, it's very slow relative to, the speed of thought, or, speech being much, much faster. So it ends up being a very different process, and there's a lot of benefits to that too, and I love it. But the talking out loud has been really, really helpful for me, and it's been a huge part of this process for the past few months.
Me too, but for the past couple years. I remember, actually, it was really when we started doing the podcast that I started trying to talk more, and I started recording things, and I
Yeah.
started seeing the benefit of being able to talk through things in this weird way that I never experienced before. And actually, about a year ago, there was this moment of, oh my God, it really worked that quickly, sort of epiphany of why did I not just do that before? I was working on a painting. I can't remember which one. I was working on a painting at the beginning part before I jumped into the painting. There were so many things in my head for a couple weeks that were just so jumbled, and I was getting so frustrated because I couldn't quite figure out how to move on. So do I do more of the drawing? Do I do the sketches? I know I need to set up a model and everything. Or do I do, color studies or what? And it was subconsciously jumbled in this weird mess that was just so frustrating. And it's not a type of thing that you can really explain because it is so
Right.
nebulous in the weird corners of the human brain that don't actually make any sense. So after getting so frustrated with this after a couple weeks, I was like, okay, what do I normally do? Oh yeah, I'll talk it out. So I put the recorder on. 4 minutes later, I had an exact plan of exactly what to do, like a step-by-step process. This is what you need to do, and this is the order in which you need to do it. It was all solved within 4 minutes. And it was so... Well, it was stupid that I didn't do that earlier. But there's something about being recorded that we usually view as a bad thing. You stop acting, like yourself, and you sort of put on this facade of some kind. Sometimes it's just a little bit or whatever. But you are aware of being recorded. And with audio, it's a bit less than with video, but whatever. We often see it as a bad thing, but in this way, it can actually be a very good thing in that it causes you to sit up straight and think just a little bit before you talk, and it forces your thoughts to be converted into reality. You have to say them. Everything has to go through this funnel of... It has to make sense to this weird recording entity that's watching me or listening. In this case, just listening. And you have to formulate sentences that make some sort of sense because you can't just show it this jumbled mess in your head. And what it sort of puts this pinpoint on all of your massive amounts of thoughts. It forces you to force everything through this pinpoint. It's like you're trying to... read a vinyl record, like listen to the whole album at one time, and you keep like slamming your hand on it. Like, I want to hear it all right now. And it just doesn't work. You have to put the needle on and slowly just go through the entire thing, one line at a time. And that's sort of what the recording is doing. Or when you're forced to record like that, you sort of start thinking in terms of reality or terms of making it real. And you'll find out very quickly what does not make any sense if you can't vocalize it. And also some things just become very clear when you're viewing it through the eyes or the ears of this recording device and sort of looking back on yourself. So that weird extra self-awareness that you get, certainly sometimes a bad thing, but in this case, it forces you to think about it in a different perspective. And I've found that to be extremely useful. So, whenever I start feeling that jumbled mess, you start talking and it starts to make a little bit more sense.
Yeah, I feel like that jumbled mess is kind of a predictable outcome of being really focused and really drilled down. There's... I think part of the nature of doing something really challenging and, building something, and I would, consider building a painting to be part of that, or whenever you're really trying to make something, solve difficult problems, you kind of have to get very focused. Like that's where the work gets done, is when you really dial things down. But the nature of being very focused on a very singular problem means that you're losing perspective. Like all the other things are no longer in your frame of mind. And so you wind up like really drilling down into one thing and then really drilling down into something else, and you just aren't able to make the bigger connections and, you know, sort it all out in your head. Like you're not really supposed to. That's the nature of being super focused. So there almost has to be at some point this counter process where you are able to zoom back out and say, okay, let's piece all this together. What is the bigger picture? You know, how do I sort through these things that don't really make sense? And I've kind of struggled with that. I've mentioned this before, but I'll often just get so hyper focused. It's very hard for me to really pull away from something. And even when I try, it's like I just get sucked back into it. If I have my computer open, you know, where I've been working on something, you know, I'll get up and I'll walk away, and before I know it, you know, a minute later, I'm back there, like just typing again. It's like I can't pull my mind out of it. I mean, it almost makes me feel a little crazy, but being able to just literally get out of the house, like totally different environment, and then to just start to think and talk and do the, you know, what do they call it? Self motivated optic flow, or what, just walking around like with scenery moving around me, getting into that state, like that's the perfect way to start getting all that stuff processed. And what I really love about this kind of newer setup that I have is that I can do that, but I still have this way of actually capturing things and getting them recorded and referenceable later, without having to totally break that flow. Like that's what has really been the magic for me, is being able to get out there and think and just work through stuff, but then all those little thoughts and, you know, oh, I need to do this, I need to do that, let's try this, let's try that, like I can just get those down and have it all for myself later. Something about that has just been really magical for me.
And I will admit that this is one thing that AI can do that I'm excited about.
I can't, okay,
Yeah,
just
okay, go ahead.
real quick, I just want to complain about the so we're calling it AI, and everyone's calling it AI, and we're talking about artificial intelligence. Machine learning is probably a better term. Like the whisper thing, it's just transcribing audio to text. It's not like, it's just that simple. We've had systems that could do that before. This is just better. So
Yeah, that's why
it's
I'm
just like
excited
a
about it.
pretty basic tool using these neural network machine learning techniques. You know, it doesn't have to be this big scary AI thing. You know, in this case, it's not generative. I guess you could argue the summary thing is generative.
Is it?
but
Is it learning from us though? So is it?
in this case,
That's,
no.
That's the only. Okay. Well, then in this case, yeah, I like it. It's cool. The idea of everything I say being uploaded to something.
Right.
That
So
gives me the creeps. But
everything you say is being uploaded to me, so you have to kind of trust that I'm not being weird about it, but I'm not. I find it super cringy to read anything that you've recorded, and it's kind of cringy to read my own stuff, so I don't really want to.
well,
Um,
when you first uploaded it for me, like I know, like because we had to set it up between the two of us, it works on his computer and everything. Everything I record is sent to him and
Yeah.
on his computer, so he can listen to anything I say. So the first recording I did, I was so conscious about that. I mean, it's, you know, difficult enough to just record yourself, but then to know that Mike has access to every single word that I say.
Yeah.
I don't think you read it, or maybe you did, but you won't admit it. But the first recording I did, and it's all transcribed for you, is to you about how awkward I feel. So, yeah.
Gross.
It starts out with, hey, Mike, this is really weird or something. And then I just go on for
Well, now I kind of do
30
want to
minutes.
read it, but I won't. I wish. I mean, we'll see how this shapes up. Like I said, it looks like Apple's kind of rolling this feature out. It's a good thing to remember that, you know, unless it's an on-device model and you can sort of verify things, it is going somewhere else, and anybody who works at that company could read it. They're definitely going
don't-
to scrape it. You know.
Yeah, we could very easily launch it to another AI conversation. I don't want to. I want to stay focused on the
Yeah.
audio recording and how it works with your
Yeah,
brain.
yeah, totally. And I do think that there is something here that is really cool, that maybe there was a way to do something kind of like this before. I mean, I think the
I
way
tried.
it worked was you would pay somebody to do it. You know,
I did. Yeah.
did you?
Yeah, I had an app. I can't remember the name of it, but I bought an app. It was kind of expensive. I don't remember how much, but it was not cheap because I was doing so many recordings. Every day
Yeah.
when I drive to work, I would just talk and talk, just ramble on about, art ideas or whatever, podcast ideas, just random stuff. So I had just tons of recordings. I still do this, but not quite as much. And I really wanted a transcript of everything I said so I could look at it and somehow organize it. So my dream was sort of to transcribe this stuff somehow.
Yeah.
So I paid for an app to do it. And then, of course, you couldn't use old recordings. You had to record through their app. I did that for a couple days, and their transcripts were awful. They were terrible. It was just gibberish.
Yeah.
I paid them for their effort, but I did not get any good results from that. So this 100% different.
Yeah. Well, what I meant was, in Twin Peaks, Agent Cooper, he does his voice recorder. He's talking to his personal assistant, secretary person. Like, that's how you would do it, is you just paid somebody to literally go back, listen to everything, type it up. And if there was a, note to self, I forget the name of the person he's talking to, but you're just telling somebody like, hey, remind me to do this later, or write this down, put this on my calendar or my to-do list. Well, now we have the ability more or less to do that without a human in the loop. So it becomes somewhat democratized, where pretty soon we'll all be able to use it. Like, we all have our own personal assistant in that limited context. And I'm actually really excited about that. I've been using it. I really do really like it. And I think it's going to be really cool that we all get that.
Yeah, he would talk to Diane, I think.
Was it?
Diane,
Okay.
gotta find out what types of trees these are. There's something about them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we have that now.
Diane's a damn fine cup of coffee. Yeah. Yeah, pretty sure it's Diane. Okay, so we're talking about stuff on a recording, and it sort of clears up your brain. And there's this other thing that I've heard people say, and I'm not sure if I agree with it or not, but I think I do sometimes I don't. They say once you write something down, you forget it. Or once it's written down, you have a tendency to forget it. As if the act of writing something down relieves your brain of needing to remember it, and then you forget it, which can help because now you have it written down and you don't have to think about it, but also it can hurt because then you won't remember it. I don't know. I guess it's probably more complicated than that. But I have seen this happen where I'll write something down and then I feel like I don't really have to remember it. Whatever. I don't even care about that. Yep. But I do think it's interesting because it calls into question the function of memory in your brain when you're thinking about stuff. And I do think that this plays a big part. When you are in that super focused mode, or your brain feels kind of scrambled a little bit, or you're just holding a lot of different thoughts and ideas in your head at one time. And you know the feeling, it's almost like your head feels kind of hot and you're thinking about this thing and that thing and this thing, and you're sort of mixing them all together and you're trying to either solve problems or just think about all this stuff, and it becomes sort of this hot mess. And I think one big percentage of your brain is trying to hold everything in recent memory, or hold it in, what is the term? I can't remember. So funny. Anyway, it's trying to hold it in. Yeah, it's trying to hold it in RAM, the part of your brain that can easily recall it in that moment. And so you're holding, 100 things all at one time. And so your memory RAM bank is full, and it's having a difficult time. But when you turn on the recorder, you start to offload some of this stuff, and your brain starts to become a little bit more clear, and you can just sort of relax and start letting it all go. And so that's one big aspect of recording or talking through something, specifically recording, because I think there's also a part of your brain that knows that this is becoming permanent, just like you would know if you're writing it down. This is becoming inscribed on some thing, and I can relieve my brain of having to use the function of memory so much, and I can just let it go. And so that aspect of this, I think, it plays a big role in recording and writing things down, period.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you mentioned that, like, how writing something down, or in this case recording something, can, remove the need to remember it, as if that's a bad thing. And maybe in some contexts it is, but for me, like, that's the point. I want to not have to have a bunch of stuff in my head. I want to get it out. I want to feel like, okay, I've thought through this, I came up with the action items, that's recorded and there for later, and I'll look at that when I want to, but now I'm free to think of something else, so I can go tackle the next problem without trying to, in the back of my head, think, okay, well, don't forget that we got to do XYZ, we got to make sure this gets written down later, or whatever. Like, that's what I want. So I don't know, if you were like really focused on needing to remember something, maybe this isn't the way to do it, but in this case, that's exactly what I don't want to have to do.
Right. And I've noticed this sort of impulse where, I'll get a new, at work or something, I'll get a new assignment. And I'm hearing all this stuff, they're giving me the prompt, they're telling me the information, and then I get back to my desk, and instantly I grab the Post-it notes, I grab a pencil, and I just start, jotting down everything. I have to get it down on paper and get it clear. Or if I'm thinking of a visual idea, I have to sketch it out, even if it's the worst sketch ever. It's like I just feel that need to let it go, to transcribe it into something else instantly. And then a lot of times when I feel that same feeling, I have to talk about it on a recording device. So
yeah,
I don't know.
Cool. Well, anything else to add on the audio recording front?
Yes. People don't do this because talking and recording it is weird. I don't know a single person other than you, and just recently started doing this, but there is hardly anyone that actually uses the function of recording audio as a tool in their life. I mean, musicians use it to record music, but it's just, talking and recording audio only is not a thing that people really think to do or want to do. Number one reason is because it's really awkward at first.
Yeah.
It's very difficult to ever listen to your voice in a recording. But I don't know. For the past 3 years, it's been a big part of how I think through things. Very beneficial. But also, I've used it even before that. I mean, it's just a thing that I really like. And I just don't see it with anyone else. And I don't think you have to do that. It's just, I would encourage people to try it. I mean, if you're just starting out, right, you've never recorded yourself like this ever before in a voice memo type way. The first few times you do it, you're going to hate it because it's so awkward. And you don't get any of the benefits that we're talking about on this. So you have to push through for quite a little bit before you can relax and just talk and actually allow it to help you and to reap the benefits of it. So the beginning stages of anyone doing this, you're going to run into some massive problems that will probably turn you off to it forever.
Yeah.
But I would just encourage people to push through a little bit and try it out for an extended period of time, and then tell us that we're wasting our time with doing this.
Well, no, that's actually a great point. Couple pro tips from me, because I've been really doing this a lot. So pretty much always I record myself talking in a public space. Now, it might just usually it's me walking on the sidewalk, but I live in a city. There's a lot of people around, so I walk past people a lot, and I do get some funny looks when I'm talking into my, Twin Peaks style voice recorder, but mostly I just don't really care. Um, but if that's a bit of an issue, just connecting to your phone and then having headphones on like this, or even earbuds, people just assume you're on a phone call. And there's almost this added pressure. I've mentioned how talking things out kind of forces you into this linear, okay, I need to finish my thought, I need to finish this particular thread type of thinking. But when you're around people and you know that they're at least sort of vaguely in the background listening to you talk, assuming you're on a phone call, you kind of want to keep up the charade that you're talking to a person. So I really imagine myself talking to someone else, in part just to not sound like a crazy person. And so it just sort of reinforces that. But having headphones on and just acting like you're on a phone call totally normalizes it. I mean, people do that all the time. And other than the first couple times where it feels a little funny to you, people just think you're on a phone call. So it really is totally fine. And then also, I honestly think, I mean, it's always hard to predict the future, but I think we are about to move into an era where talking to a computer or your phone or whatever becomes a lot more normal. And we kind of thought that this was going to happen years back, like when Apple introduced Siri and, all these voice assistants started showing up. And that kind of sort of did a little bit. You can dictate text and it's not terrible, and you can talk to Siri, but really Apple acted like Siri was going to be good, and it's not. And, whatever, like just the voice assistant stuff has been so overpromised and just genuinely not good, because it really wasn't what they were pitching it as. It wasn't this machine learning AI thing. It was more just this sort of basic like speech recognition. It's about to get a lot better, and we'll see how good it gets. But even just me hacking around with the tools that I have, it's been really pretty good. The voice transcription is extremely good, other than when it goes insane. And, the summary stuff is really good. Like just the different tools that I've messed with have been good. And we're about to move into an era where everybody has access to stuff that's like actually good. So using the spoken word interface to tech is going to become viable now. And there's still going to be this social weirdness to it, but I think we're going to get over that to where people will start doing that a lot more often. And I think a good example is I got I think Apple gave it to me actually, like the original Series 0 Apple Watch. Really the first smartwatch that was like beyond just super primitive. So the screen had the, raise to wake, and you would get a text message or whatever. And I remember I got it like day one, started using it, and it was so awkward because I would be talking to somebody, I would get a text, and rather than pull out my phone, which was very normalized, I would just glance down at my watch. And almost every time the person was like, "Oh, do you need to go? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to keep you." And I'm like, no, it's like a smartwatch. It shows me a text. I'm like, oh, okay. But just that gesture was kind of offensive. Like, it was just not a thing that people did. And it really took a while, like a couple years, before now, seeing somebody kind of glance down at a smartwatch is just not a big deal. You're not going, oh my God, okay, I've upset you. You're tired of being here. It's not this, let me get out of here gesture anymore, or at least mostly not. So I think that the talking to a device is in a similar spot where it's mostly just not done very often, but I think it's about to change to where spoken word is just, it's so much faster than typing, or having to manually, unlock a phone and navigate through menus and drill your way into something, in particular. Weirdly, being able to speak words into a machine is a lot like using a command line interface, which is what the ultra nerds like me like to use on a computer, where you could just type a command and it kind of does what you want. That there's something really powerful about that. And our ability to use natural language in order to execute specific commands on a machine, we're finally getting there to where it's going to be a normal thing. So anyway, if you want to be a little bit ahead of the curve, start playing around with some of this audio stuff, because I think that actually is where we're headed, and it's going to be much more normal very soon.
Which is funny because it was popular before and then it died for a long time, and then now I
Well,
guess it's where we're headed, which
we're coming
is fine
full
with me
circle.
because I really like it.
Yeah, like I said, I'm weirdly like a little bit optimistic about some of these things. Like I actually think that this in particular, this has been a really nice use of machine learning for me, is transcribing my voice memos and doing little bullet pointed summary and sticking them on a to-do list where I can easily access them later. Like that is perfect. And I'm actually excited that Apple, as much criticism as I have around them, it seems like they want to kind of take that approach of just not building this magical oracle thing. They want to build, some relatively simple tools for people to do this kind of stuff. There's some weirdness around it. I'm not saying it's all great. Some people like you are a little bit less thrilled about having AI infect every little corner of your personal device, but there are some cool upsides at least. So,
I'm staying positive this week. So,
all right, cool. Cool. Anything else?
nope.
Cool. Well, I hope everybody plays around with some voice memo audio recording stuff. Honestly, it's been pretty fun.